welcome back to Inside the Lines. Happy Friday. It is a prop party today. We're missing Jake, but we have all his picks, so not to worry there. We'll start with some NBA, and then we'll hit some football for this weekend. Bring in Steven here. First of all, congratulations on the Ravens win last night. How are we feeling?
Thank you. It was fine. It's well worth missing all three of my picks. I feel like I paid the piper. I earned those, so you're welcome, Ravens Nation, Flock Nation.
Right. And Derek and John are in the chat as well, answering all your questions. So feel free to ask them there as well. All right, let's start in the NBA tonight. To the association we go. Thompson, you like him to have a double-double versus the Cavs tonight. What do we think about this game in general?
Yeah, I like the fact that, he's averaging a double-double, but he's only had 2 in his 12 games. So, and he actually he's a decent long shot to get 10 assists. He averages nearly 4 a game. Jalen Duren, their center, is out. Cade Cunningham is a point guard, but he's a big point guard. And, you figure he'd be more of a 6 or 7 rebound type player, but he's only averaging 3.5 rebounds. Detroit's actually out rebounding teams by +9 in 6 road games, and plus money, plus 135 last time I checked on FanDuel, makes me believe that he can have a third double-double. I also like the fact that Detroit only shoots 50% on 2s and 35% on 3s, while also holding the opposing team to those same numbers in their games. And so that's more rebounding opportunities because the over-under for the game is fairly high. So hopefully a lot of missed shots and a lot of Thompson rebounds.
Right. Let's move over to the Spurs and the Kings here. Now, this is an interesting game, interesting situation for the Spurs because it feels like they don't really have a point guard.
Yeah, they've decided to go point guardless. Just an interesting call. But so Sohan he was known as just a defender, but he's actually rounded out his offensive game and he handles the ball okay. And his assists have gone from 2.5 to 4.5. His rebounds have stayed the same as his rookie year, right around 5.2, 5.3. So his average is under 10.5. I like this, even though our model line is 10.4, which is obviously not that much different than 10.5. When you get plus money on the under, I kind of like that. I also think that the model line is as high as it is because the Kings had 2 really poor road games at Houston, a 25-point loss and an 18-point loss. But since then, they've turned things back around, look more like they have as the road team. That was really good, better on the road than home last season. So I think that they play really well against San Antonio and keep the offense in check.
Yeah, I like that here. Looking at the comments over here, Big Cheesy cashed that over 226 on the Warriors. Good for him. Looking at the Kings now, -4 in the first half. Do we have any thoughts on this situation?
Yeah, Big Cheesy's smart. Like he's picked up on the fact that when we do our Tron graphic, we always show the fade price because the way I've been going, it's like the fade, Fade's been working. So
for show of the people.
Apologies or thank you, however you want to see it. I like the third Kings -4 first half. I do in our value. Let me look at the model real quick here. I have my notes. We like the Kings. Now the lines moved quite a bit. It was an open. I had it at 5.5 in the consensus. It's bid up to 8.5. The sim has it -9, and so even if I like the Kings because they are a fast starting team, especially like the last game at LA versus the Lakers. They really came out fast. The Aaron Fox super aggressive since coming back from his brief injury, and he's put up like 28 2 games in a row. So, and Wembanyama seems like there's a notoriously slow starter. And so I do like Sacramento to come out quick. So I would take that first half.
Mm-hmm. Okay, good to know there. Let's move over to your third player prop for tonight. We're moving into New Orleans hosting the Nuggets as 5-point home dogs here. But you like New Orleans player to get some things done tonight.
Yeah, Valanciunas over 8.5 rebounds at pretty good prices, just -105 on DraftKings. So the over, he's a big time rebounder. His over is 57-31 going back to last season, nearly 65%. His rebounding, the line is lower. I think the odds makers have dropped it down because his rebounding average is down slightly this year to just 8.2 a game. But his over is still 6-5. For his career, it's not a massive bump, and he's played a lot of games against Jokic. And in those games, his minutes and rebounding are slightly up 5 to 10% higher than his overall career stat average. Because for obvious reasons, they need a guy with his size to try to get Jokic, and Valanciunas can score, so hopefully they can draw a couple fouls on Jokic. He's one of the few players in the NBA that can match Jokic's size.
Yeah.
Last season,
success with this too. We've had success with this too, looking at players going up against Jokic and having, a lot more minutes.
Yeah, that they have to play these players. I think Zion has not been, he's been okay offensively, but he's not the rebounder that I was hoping he would be coming out of college.
Mm-hmm.
And New Orleans last season, so another reason that they last season they were really good at home rebounding the ball. They were +3 per game. This season they've been really bad, -9. So I see some regression back to the mean in this case, where they'll be back to, and they had a really good, their last home game was very impressive in a big win versus Dallas.
Right. All right. Good stuff there. More questions in the chat. Sorry, Jake isn't here to answer all of your college basketball and football questions, but we can do our best with the model to look at some of them here. Before that, let's head into the NFL with stuff we do know. Player props over here in the NFL. We will start with A.J. Dillon. They're playing the Chargers. You like him over 25.5 rushing yards. Is this a low line for him?
Yeah, I checked the injury report. He's not listed as injured, and our Fantasy Football Today team has him as a running back 35 in fantasy. So that's a must start running back in a typical league. So yeah, they wouldn't say that if they thought he was going to have 24 rushing yards or 25 rushing yards. The model line is closer to 40, right at 39. So the good thing about him is now the conventional wisdom might be Aaron Jones has been playing well, and then if Jones is back, then that's fewer carries for Dillon. But Dillon seems to be doing better with Aaron Jones there, as he's the contrast. So Aaron Jones is the faster, wears out the defense, and then Dillon can come in, capitalize. And by having Aaron Jones there, you get longer drives, and so there's just more plays. So even though his percentage of rushing, you'd rather have Dillon get 40% of 30 carries and have, be able to get 4.5 yards per carry than get 70% of 18 carries because they're playing from behind and he's averaging 2.5. So this is a case where the better Jones is, the more effective it is, the better it could be for Dillon. His last 2 weeks with Aaron Jones having big games, Dillon still had 40 and 70 rushing yards.
Yeah. It seems like this can't fail. Makes a little too much sense here.
Yeah, what's happened to me, what's been burned me recently is really good logic that only applies for a half. Like even last night's Keaton Mitchell play, he didn't get much done first half, and then all of a sudden second half, he gets
well,
going.
I went to bed thinking, now they're blowing them out. Now they're just going to run the ball, and it would be a Mitchell show, and it just wasn't, which was so nauseating.
You never go to bed during any Ravens game if you want to be on my good side, Mackenzie. You got to watch it to the very, very end.
I take it back. All right, let's move on. Trevor Lawrence, over 239.5 passing yards. We have him projected for 260, which is a pretty distinct difference.
Yeah, Lawrence has not been putting up good stats this year, and everyone knows it. But I still think that he's obviously an awesome player. And again, I'll use the regression to the mean logic that I don't. Last year he averaged 242 per game over this number, and he's just down to 236. So it's time to him to get back to his 240 plus. And so for him to do that, he's going to have to average over 250 the rest of his final 8 games. And I do like it against Tennessee. Tennessee's this year they're allowing 257 pass yards per game on the road this year, 8.5 yards per attempt. So that metric is poor. And plus Tennessee has not been good. So they're not exactly playing from they're playing from behind where the opposing teams aren't passing as much as they need to. So you combine that last year, they were really bad on the road, allowing 308 per game on the road. So when you have a Titans team that had horrible pass defense last year, and then this year is horrible in terms of yards per attempt, I see it as a good spot for Lawrence to have a big game.
Right. Steve's saying he's seeing Dillon now up to 29.5. We still like it. I mean, I think anything under 30 is still a decent amount of comfortable value now.
Yeah, I mean, we have 39. So A.J. Dillon, so according to OddsJam, Fanatics still has 25.5 at -120. Mm-hmm. So yeah, you're right. There's 30.5s on the board, 29.5s on the board. So you should definitely pounce at 25.5 at Fanatics if you can do it.
Yeah. Act now situation there. All right, one more prop here. Going over to that awesome football team, the New York Giants, going to play the Commanders. Now, Darren Wallen out makes this a very good situation for Mr. Daniel here.
Yeah. So, I mean, I didn't watch this team play closely, but, and Tommy DeVito, obviously I wouldn't be surprised if DeVito had no passing yards and Bellinger didn't have any receiving yards in the first quarter. But, there's garbage time. And even with DeVito the last few weeks, with Waller on IR, DeVito had 2 catches for 34 yards and 3 catches for 43 yards in his last 2 games. Going back, and I look back, I want to say, his last 13 games spreading out over several seasons where he had at least 3 targets, which he should in this game. The over is 11-2.
Mm-hmm.
The Giants, they're not going to move the ball effectively necessarily enough. Obviously, they're going to rely heavily on Saquon for 90% of their offense. But if you're behind, you have no choice. You got to pass it. And there's nothing better when you have a prop like this for 3rd and 15 and to see Bellinger get a little 4-yard pass and run 7 yards and do that twice when a team is down by 21 points. It's like very sweet.
We're looking for 3 targets, really. It's really all we're looking for.
3 targets. We're looking for 150 yards from DeVito and Bellinger getting 11% of them.
Mm-hmm.
That sounds very doable.
I will ignore Big Cheesy's question about Michigan beating Georgia, but I will address his question about any value over the Niners-Bucks over 41.5 here.
Let me see. Niners-Bucks. So just so you know, the only major value on our board for NFL this weekend is still that Houston game. The line went from -4 to -5, back down to -4, now back to -5. So, but Niners. We don't have any value on the over or under, but our sim line is 40. And the consensus line that I have is 41.5. So, it's just, I guess Tampa's defense, is good, and they did very, very well last week. I know that's obviously Tennessee, but in Tampa's offense, they crushed Tennessee, but they still only scored 20 points.
Mm-hmm.
And so I think that it's not so much San Francisco's side, Tampa Bay's team total being so low. I don't see the value of the overall over.
Okay. Big Cheese is going to roll with it anyway. Speak your truth, Big Cheese. Do what you want to do.
Yeah.
All right, let's move on. We have we're going to head over to Odds Jam, take a look at a few player props for college football that Jake sent us. We'll do our best to speak for Jake. With said props. We'll start with UTSA, Karian Barnes, over 77.5 rushing yards. Now, our model projection here for him is 86. A lot of this has to do with the USF defense.
So the nice disparity here for him. You can get over 70.5 at just -114 on FanDuel right now. That's a 7-yard gap. If you were to subscribe to Odds Jam, there's probably they would have strong, a good way for you to make money in this situation. They have a whole complicated, fancy algorithm about how to capitalize on outlying lines and disparities in line values here. But yeah, 70.5 now is you can get. So I would ignore Jake's Prize Picks play and go to FanDuel.
Okay. Good stuff there. Let's move over to Indiana. Josh Henderson, a running back. It seems like the storyline here, we like him under 44.5 rushing yards because there are so many running backs. It's like the Eagles, except they use all of their running backs.
Yeah.
So it's really hard to justify 46 rushing yards here.
It's like if Indiana gave a bunch of people millions of dollars in NIL money and then never used them. Exactly. He's projected for only 28. Yeah, they have 4 different running backs. And he's had only 1 game this season over 44.5 rushing yards. Michigan State, for all even though it's a bad year for them overall, their run defense is pretty good on just 3.7 per game.
Mm-hmm. Let's move over to Mizzou. Yeah, Mizzou is playing Florida. Luther Burton, over 83.5 receiving yards. Now, it seems like number 1 wide receivers have had a lot of success against Florida's corner, Jason Marshall. He's projected for over 100 yards in our simulation.
Yeah, and so remember this coming from Jake, University of Florida grad. And he was at these games. You saw, I think saw the LSU game last week. So, and Burton is amazing. The good thing about Burton is he usually gets like a 60, 70-yard catch in the first quarter. He looks like he gets hurt. He limps off the field, freaks it out like he's going to miss the prop because he's hurt. Then he comes back and he has another 30, pops another 30. So he's going to be a big time draft pick next year. And the line, you can get 81.5 at FanDuel right now. And it's creeping up because you see numbers like 85.5 and 83.5 in most places.
Okay, good stuff there. Let's move over to Mr. Shai Sanders. We have him under 20.5 rushing yards here. Do you want to tell us why, Steven?
Yeah, well, sacks count for negative rushing yards in college. He's the most sacked quarterback pretty much in the country. And yeah, so that's why that he might, we have him pretty high percentage chance of scoring a touchdown on the ground, but he could be in line for 10 carries, 8 yards, a touchdown, because 10 of those carries were actually seven were sacks, for minus 30 yards, and he runs 3 times for good yardage, 40 yards, and then it nets 10. So I like that play a lot. He's only gone over the number 3 times this year. Yeah,
and you feel like he's mobile, and then you actually look at the stats, and he's really just not racking up the numbers there. Let's move over to another quarterback, Dillon Gabriel, over 26.5 fantasy points. Now, from what I'm understanding, BYU's defense is just really not there.
Yeah, I mean, BYU, their defense overall, they are better at home, BYU, but that could be a product of their schedule and who they played at home versus on the road. Like they had like Sam Houston State and Cincinnati, 2 really struggling offenses this year at home. They didn't even do that well against Cincinnati. So it makes this 21.5 points allowed at home props them up a lot better when you have a Sam Houston State who had less than 200 yards for the game. Mm-hmm. But overall, going back to last year, there's a team that basically allows 30 points a game. And the good thing about Oklahoma is Dillon Gabriel can give it to you both ways. So, if you look at it, we have a projection of over 300 passing yards and 3 touchdowns. So right there, that's just on his passing totals. Yeah, high interception rate. So that brings him down to around 23 fantasy points based on passing. But then Gabriel, you just remember that he's got some big rushing days. He ran for 11 times 50 yards and 3 touchdowns last week. He's had 2 3-touchdown games out of 2 of his last 3 weeks. So we are projecting a solid, another 3, nearly 4 points, nearly 7 points rushing. So he's got a good 2 ways to help you here, and I think that 29 fantasy points as well in order.
Yes, dynamic quarterback there. Let's move over to Jordan Waters over at Duke, over half a rushing touchdown. Now he's scoring a rushing touchdown 70% of our sims, which would make that line closer to minus 200. So minus 125, which we're seeing some value here.
Yeah, I'm not sure what's going on here. I mean, so you can actually get minus 120. Yeah, minus 125 DraftKings is still the best price. He's had a rushing touchdown in 8 of his last 10 games. So that's right around where our sim would set it at. UVA is a conference opponent, but they've had some surprisingly good games recently, but let me just do a sanity check. The good thing is when you're talking about the UVA's rushing defense, look, they're allowing 204 at 5.4 a clip at home this season. So yeah, again, one of those deals where not exactly sure why the line set so low, because Waters has 2 full seasons of being a 1 rushing touchdown per game player. It's a pretty good track record. So I don't know if there's any kind of injury concerns about him, because usually, when you have 50 something odd games and, a couple thousand players to set prop line and 6,000-7,000 prop lines to set in college, you'll just stick with an average and then adjust it based on a total. I'm not sure why it's as low as it is.
We'll take it.
Yeah.
Let's move over to DJ Giddens at K-State, over 18.5 receiving yards. We have him projected for 31. Jake's thought here was this is based off his career average. However, if you look at his last few games, he's hit this over in 6 of his last 7, and he's averaging over 28 yards in this 2023 season.
Yeah, I'm going to take some credit. Jake is much better than me in doing these picks, but that's actually my note that I wrote, Kenzie. That's my
Look at you.
contribution. So, because I was confused by the line because I looked at his average, like the guy's averaging nearly 30 receiving yards a game. Why would they set the line at 18.5? And then I was like, oh, okay, again, the simple math. He averaged around 8 yards receiving a game last year. So these 8, you don't have to be a mathematician to settle in on 18.5 is right in between those two. So I'm again surprised that you can get this kind of value. Let's see if the number's going up at all. And it's locked in at 18.5 across the board. So right now, Caesars has the best price at -113.
Interesting. All right, one more pick here, going to Minnesota's quarterback here to throw an interception.
Mm-hmm.
This sounds like your logic as well, so I'll let you take the wheel here.
He's had 2 really good statistical games in a row. I want to say he's had 3 touchdowns. 3 touchdowns back in 0 picks in 2 straight games. But they were against Purdue, who is, based on my calculation, 98th best in defensive passer rating in the country. It's only 131 teams. Illinois, and they're 60th, so they're average. So now Ohio State statistically is number 1. And you saw what Ohio State did to Penn State's quarterback, who's supposed to be an NFL prospect next year, a high one. And they completely shut him down. So, yeah, this guy is due. Regression to the mean in this case means an interception, especially against Ohio State. They're not going to be – they're either going to – he could throw a pick in the first drive, or they'll be far behind and need to take some risks, in which case even higher percentage chance of a pick.
Yeah. Yeah, I like that there. Mel asking the chat, great question about if we're going to be doing any NHL coming up. We are still trying to get our NHL feet and data under us with the beginning of the season. But once we have value and once we start to have consistent value, we're happy to share that with you. And if not, John will always be in the chat answering those questions for sure. So if not on
Plus,
screen,
we'll have like January, February, March, April, May, June, like when it's football season, we got to get those ratings up. We can't, we might have like 50 people right now. Until we have around 500, we're not going to be able to do too much hockey because it just doesn't bring in.
Yeah. It's on the
asses in the seats. Yeah. If you can get 100 of your friends, because you sound like a very popular person, to tune in every day at 1:00 and ask for NHL, we will do NHL for an hour and a half a day.
Yeah. We're here for the people. We're here to answer the questions, and we will certainly always answer your questions for sure, if that's NHL or not. All right, that's all we have time for. I do not have a recap screen because I just hopped off a different show, but that is my fault. So take your notes as you can accordingly, play it back. But that's all we have time for today. We're not going to be doing a Sunday night look-ahead show just because we're sort of losing value this late into the season. We've become really in line with the odds makers, and we're there's only so much discrepancy we have with them. But again, as value comes out, we will absolutely share it with you guys. So Monday will be the first show of the week for us at 1:00. So till then, good luck with your bets. Good luck with your prop.
Yeah, I'll answer Nick S. Yeah, we agree that Tyreek, we have 112 projection for him. So 91.5 is a layup. But for me, I think I actually hit a higher percentage of my free throws than my layups. So layup, that doesn't make it easy.
Yeah. All right. Good stuff there. Good luck with your bets tonight. We will see you guys on Monday.